This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear, your local micropub on Southbourne Grove, where you can't watch the game, but you can definitely talk about it. Head to the White Bear on any AFCB match day wearing your team shirt and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the cherries, here come the cherries, here come the cherries, number
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our newly bolstered Cherries went down 3-1 to Slaven Bilic's West Ham United on Tuesday night. Here to help us work out why it wasn't such a happy new year at Dean Court is Damien Hill. Damien, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Mike, and thanks for inviting me back again.
Always a pleasure to have you on. Now, yesterday's match, there was a lot of anticipation going into the game, mainly due to the new signings. So much anticipation that they even had a light show before kick-off. But, yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment in the end, wasn't it?
It was. I wasn't over-impressed by the light show. I did enjoy it at Chelsea. It was something different, but I don't think it was a part of our club, if you know what I mean. But, yeah, obviously the new signings were all there and everything. But I think the atmosphere was a little bit flat. I know you weren't sat next to me, were you?
No, I've sat in that. I was moved to the Ted McDougall stand last night. I took my dad, and they wouldn't let us sit in the family stand, even though we were effectively father and son, but slightly older than they normally let in the family stand. And, yeah, they shoved us in the Ted Mac stand, which wouldn't be a problem. I don't mind sitting there, except I've sat there twice now. On both, the last one was against Leeds. On both occasions, we've been 1-0 up at half-time and lost 3-1. So I won't be sitting there again if I can help it. It seems to be a bit of bad luck for me. And, yeah, I don't want to take full responsibility for last night's result, but like most football fans, these kind of superstitions tend to weigh quite heavily. Eddie went with what would be, I guess, the regular starting 11, aside from Benik Afobe came in for Josh King. King's been struggling with his hamstring for quite a while, and he didn't make the bench last night. So hopefully, one of the benefits of the signing, not the only one, will be he gets to regain full fitness, and we'll see him again soon. Iturbi and Graben were on the bench. I read somewhere today that the total fees paid for the players on our bench last night in their careers is over 50 million. So it's a big change from when we couldn't even get enough players on the bench. Lee Tomlin, Tequila Rancy were nowhere to be seen, or certainly not in the squad. And Nuno Kane came in for Sean McDonald. So there was much excitement, as we said. But really, West Ham should have scored from the kick-off. They had a chance when
there was no ball shooting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Francis made a mistake. Yeah,
that's right. There was a long ball from Collins, and it was headed back to Boritz by Francis, but the header really wasn't. It sort of looped up a bit instead of going, I guess, a bit more straight, and it gave, I think it was Valencia, it might have been Antonio, the opportunity to get there first, but luckily he made a bit of a weak connection, which allowed Boris to clear. But then, as you said, Mark Noble, who seems to have been playing for West Ham for about 50 years, on the edge of the 18-yard box, he blazed over. But that could have been worse, couldn't it?
It could have been. It was a very unusual, well, I wouldn't say unusual, but a very sloppy start to start with by us. Passing was a little bit astray, and West Ham put us on the back foot straight away, didn't they? Which is, some teams don't do that to us. And Man United didn't for a start. They let us have the ball and let us play with the ball. But West Ham certainly did attack us from the start, and the first 10 minutes were certainly bit of a rough ride.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team, and confidence is a huge factor, as we know, up against, well, our two most startling results of the season have been against Chelsea and Manchester United, and on both occasions we met both those teams at pretty much exactly the right time in terms of their results hadn't been good, the confidence was draining out, there was issues with the manager. No such luck with West Ham. Their results have been pretty good all season. They're doing really well, actually, and they were playing with that kind of relaxed confidence and a lot less apprehension than I think Chelsea and United did, and maybe one or two other teams. I think even we were playing without confidence at a certain stage around the time of the defeats to Southampton and City and Tottenham. I don't really like thinking about all that, but hopefully it'll be receding even further in my memory soon. But yeah, as you said, whilst Carroll was on the pitch and they had their game plan to get the ball to him as their kind of outlet, and plus the midfield with Antonio, Payet and Valencia, who were controlling it really, they were on top, and Antonio put the ball over the crossbar when Carroll connected it, crossed it into him. He kind of you'd expected it to be the other way round, but it was Antonio that was waiting in the middle. It sort of flashed across the goal.
It did.
And go on.
Carroll, he's a big old unit, and he can't run for toffee. There was just before he done his hamstring, that's when he done his hamstring. He was down on the with Charlie Daniels, went past Charlie, and then 2 minutes later he's sat on his backside when he's pulling his hamstring up. But in the air, when the throw-ins and the corners, he's a massive threat to him, though, isn't he?
He seems to always score with his head. You rarely see him scoring with his feet. When he came on the scene at Newcastle, he looked like he was the complete package. I think then he had pace. He's had a lot of injuries since then. He's obviously got the height and he had the goals. But I suppose Liverpool paid a huge amount for him. I even remember at the time Liverpool saying this is a ridiculous amount of money to pay, but we think we've got a lot of hopes for this player. But he's not really been the same since, and it's just one injury after another one last night, and that helped us. I mean, don't want to see anyone get injured, but West Ham's game plan kind of wavered then, and it put us on the front foot whilst they were trying to sort themselves out. Jelavic came on, and I was a bit relieved to see Carroll go off, because although you said he isn't necessarily as athletic as he used to be, he's just such a threat, and with our vulnerability to corners, well, we had a bit of a problem with set pieces last night anyway, but they weren't corners, and I was sort of thinking, he's gone off, that's going to help us a bit, and I think that was in about the 15th minute, and by the 17th minute we were 1-0 up. There was a throw-in from Adam Smith to Andrew Sermon, and there was a little exchange of passes between Ritchie, Smith and Sermon, I think, and Sermon found Harry Arter in space in the middle of the pitch, and Harry always has a look to see if the shot's on, and sometimes he'll go for it, sometimes he'll pass when there's a few too many opposition players in the way, but this time he carved himself a little opening. He outfoxed a couple of their defenders and struck it in with his right foot. I can never work out whether he's right or left foot. I think he might be right footed, but he scored some crackers with his left as well from about 25 yards. And as we already discussed, I was behind that goal in the Ted McDougall stand last night, and I had a good view of all the goals, unfortunately. And that one, I was delighted when it went in. I was also surprised. Adrian got a hand to it. I think the wind might have been a factor. It might have moved about in the air that Adrian didn't suspect that was going to happen, and I thought he should have saved it, really.
He should have done, yeah. It was very, very poor keeping. Most people I've spoken to and have seen the replays, it was a poor save, or poor attempt of a save. It bounced just in front of him, I believe, and sort of like, he got a hand to it and just guarded it into the back of the net. It was a good opening by Harry, and like you say, is he left foot, right foot? But if he scores with his left, he scores with his right. It doesn't really matter, does it? No,
and it was great to see him get back in the goals. He hasn't scored this season. He was out of the team for a while. He's come back in. He's had a lot to deal with off the pitch, and yeah, I mean, if you can take something positive out of last night, certainly his goal and the fact that it puts him back in the goals is a bonus. We haven't had as many goals from midfield this season as last season. We haven't had as many goals full stop, but him and Richie in particular last year, and Mark Pugh did a fine job as well. We're chipping in with goals, and I don't expect any of them to be scoring as many as last season now, but even if they could maybe score 3 or 4 more before the end of the season and we can get a bit more going up front, then hopefully that will be another factor in keeping us in the division. We kind of took control after that. We talked about confidence. Our confidence rose. Theirs was falling. They were shaking a bit, and we had a few chances, which I'm going to mention now. The first one was Charlie Daniels. He burst through, and I had a good view of this one, and he sent an absolute scorcher straight at Adrian, unfortunately. Adrian did well to stop it. I mean, he only had to stand there, and he's a Premier League goalkeeper, but Charlie really thumped it, didn't he?
He did, and it was a cold night, and I bet his fingers were a bit stinging after that one. But yeah, we did. We were pressing a lot better at that point, but we've still given the ball away too much in the central areas as well. Phoebe wasn't getting much change out of Collins really, Tompkins as well. It was not getting much change out of him, but that shot from Charlie didn't half go like a rocket.
Stung his fingers. And then Phoebe, you just mentioned, I mean, I thought he did okay last night, especially in the first half, but his his debut will be remembered for the 2 chances that he missed when he should have scored at least one of them. The first one, there was a short corner from Smith to Richie and then back again to Adam Smith. Smith had a little look up, saw a phobia at the far post and sent the cross to the back post. Phobia got above his marker, and I think when you're watching it happen in real time, you think, oh, this is going to go in. He's definitely going to hit the target, but he headed it over, and he even said himself today that he should have gobbled that up. And well, I mean, I'm not saying I definitely would have scored it, but for a striker, that was gilt edge, wasn't it?
It was. It was I think I can understand why he might not have scored. There wasn't quite not enough pace on the ball coming across, and it more like looped over him and looped over the goalkeeper. But yeah, as a Premiership striker, we just paid X amount of pounds for him, then I think he should have been hitting the back of the net with that one, really.
It bodes well for the future. He'll get some on target. He's still obviously got a little bit of a honeymoon period. In fact, immediately after the chance, almost before Adrian had put the ball on the edge of the 6-yard box to take the goal kick, the crowd was singing Afobe's name to the tune of the old Tequila Ranty song. I was thinking then that if Ranty had missed that, he'd have been absolutely slaughtered. But I suppose Ranty had a honeymoon period as well. But let's hope it works out a bit better for Afobe. And then, he had another one after that. It was a very almost defence-splitting pass from Junior Stanislas, which played Afobe in one-on-one with Adrian. When he picked up the ball, he was quite close to the goal and quite close to Adrian, but he kept a cool head and he tried to go round him instead of just getting the shot off straight away. And if it had worked, he'd have definitely scored. But his first touch, it needed to be a delicate touch. And it was a delicate touch. But unfortunately, it was too delicate. And he didn't quite push the ball into where he wanted it in front of him. And he set off expecting the ball to go more in front of him than it actually did, and then overstepped the ball, which allowed Adrian to quickly smother it. And when it happens, I mean, first of all, I was impressed with his calm head in that situation instead of just smashing the ball at the goal, because I think Adrian would have saved that if he had have done that. But secondly, I mean, I could criticise him for not having the best touches. I think more, I would say, is the disappointment. You just hope that he'll get one, well, as soon as possible against Norwich, and he'll be up and running then, won't he?
He will, yeah. It was a bit of a death touch, and he should have again done better. But his movement along their back four was quite good. For once in our game, we tried something different several times, where we tried to put the ball into the channel, but it was more up in the air rather to his feet, which obviously we haven't done much this season at all, really. But yeah, he did all right in the first half. I thought he played quite well, but he should have scored at least one of those two chances, really.
Yeah, that surprise go-to long ball that we played a little bit more. It wasn't, well, I say long ball, it kind of sounds like I'm comparing us to Wimbledon in 1988 or something, but a higher, longer ball that was hit up a few times to a phobia. I think maybe it resulted from the way that West Ham were largely in charge in the midfield. I was impressed with the way they were constantly emerging with the ball from any tight situation. Lots of slick, short passes, a bit like us at our best, actually. They kind of showed us, much like Arsenal did, the next step we need to try and take, which, well, I was going to say I'm sure we will. I certainly hope we do. Perhaps not this season, maybe next. But Eddie always seems to be able to drag us up into a high level of performance at certain stages of the season. Yeah, and that was quite noticeable yesterday. Hopefully we won't see too much of it. I mean, it's difficult when you've got a new target man up front and he doesn't necessarily know the system and the players don't know exactly how he plays. But yeah, I think he looked promising overall. Of course, the most unfortunate thing was he didn't score. That if he had got either of those, it would have put us 2-0 up, and then I think it would have been a completely different story in the second half, wouldn't it? Definitely,
yeah. It was how can I say? Well, it was a game-changing moment, really, wasn't it? If you 2-0 up, anything could have happened. You know, they might have crumbled, we might have got more. But down the other end, I'm sure you're going to say something in a second, but Boric certainly made a couple of good saves just before half-time as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and that is worth pausing to discuss for a moment, because although we're saying, you know, we should have got one of those two chances, that would have put us 2-0 up, at the same time, they easily could have scored with either of theirs. And I think that we played better in the first half, but West Ham were well in the game. And,
definitely.
Yeah, and yeah, the ones you're referring to are the Payet, who, well, I'll talk about him perhaps a little bit more in the second half, but I was impressed, and the West Ham fans certainly like him. He found Jelavic, who was in a bit of space, and legged it up the wing, the inside channel really on the right hand side, and he crossed it, looking for, I think, Antonio, who was in the box, but it hit Cook on the way through, which in turn threw Boris, who was already taking a step back to try and be prepared for when the ball went into the box. But somehow Boris managed to, despite being off balance, scoop the ball around the post. And that is not easy to do, is it?
It's not. It reminded me a bit of the old David Seaman save when he sort of like got the ball behind him and scooped it away. But yeah, it was from where I was sat. We had the perfect angle to see it, and it was a world-class save, absolutely. And the second save he made not too far over when Payet was shot and it went over the crossbar, and he saved that over the crossbar. You know, again.
Yeah, I thought that had hit the bar, but only when I saw it back today, you see that it's Boris that gets the touch, not the woodwork.
Yeah.
I think Sermon lost the ball under pressure from Jelavic.
He did, yeah.
And it fell into the path of Payet, the last person you want to see get the ball and then have a little bit of space. And because it was one of those where we lost possession, it kind of reminded me of, I mean, this one didn't go in, but at least one of the goals we conceded to Norwich earlier in the season that I think OK might have lost it on that occasion. And so you're on the back foot immediately, and the defenders are backing off and trying to cover the opposition's players and sort of get in position while still trying to keep an eye on what's happening as the ball comes towards them. In other words, you're slightly caught out. And Payet, well, he didn't go round any players, but he just kept the ball close to his feet and did a little bit of his skills and then gave himself space to shoot. He shot with his left from the edge of the 18-yard box. And yeah, I mean, Boris, he was there again, and that one, he kind of had to leap a little bit in the air and push it over. So all that we said about AFCB not scoring with two really good chances, it could have easily been 1-1 at half-time, couldn't it? It
could have been. And I think, on reflection, I think we just edged it slightly to be 1-0 up. But we were certainly lucky to be 1-0 up. It could have been 2-2, 3-2. But it was a good half, apart from the first 10 minutes. I thought after the first 10 minutes, we come back into the game a lot more. But there was still lots of sloppy mistakes throughout the whole team. Our back four especially, I don't think they had their bestest of games. With Charlie, Smudge, and Cook, and even Francis, it wasn't their best game at the back. Sermon and Harry, again, just giving the ball away a little bit too easy.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt that the players will be disappointed with their performance. And that's kind of what you want. And Harry Arter said after the game that, nobody could be anything but angry with themselves for the way they played. And I can see that, obviously. I wasn't exactly delighted myself. But I don't think Eddie Howe would agree with this, but I thought that West Ham were a good side, and those things that you mentioned about how the defence, and particularly the midfield, was making too many errors, yeah, it's partly down to us not playing at our best, but also, I think, possibly more so, West Ham having the players and the structure to dominate the ball in a way that we often do. And you can see why they've had such a good season, can't you?
Definitely. I mean, apart from the Tottenham game, where, yes, we were poor and, Harry Kane was on fire, they were probably one of the best sides, we've played against at Dean Court this year. The Everton game, another fairly good game, and the Leicester game, but I think definitely West Ham have been the best side we've seen at Dean Court.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, actually. I mean, in terms of their performance last night, Tottenham certainly would be a contender for that. But, yeah, I was very impressed with West Ham last night. And I think when a team like West Ham is quite high up the table, you don't tend to take them seriously. Even the same with Leicester, I suppose, this season. You sort of think, oh, well, they'll fade away. And, West Ham had some excellent results away from home earlier in the season. And you think, it's just... they're just having a run of luck at the moment. But I didn't, I sort of was proved slightly wrong with those thoughts last night, and I don't know where they're going to finish. I doubt they'll be in the Champions League, but I think they'll definitely finish in the top 8, which I'm expecting to be quite a few places above us, and you could certainly see why. Whereas with Man United, it was, they're going to finish above us, but they certainly didn't look any better than us when we played them. Anyway, half-time arrived. Just before we go on to talk about the second half, you mentioned earlier about the atmosphere not being the best last night. Now, being sat in a different place to where I normally sit, you get a slightly different perspective on what the atmosphere is like in different parts of the ground. I could hear some singing from the North Stand, which is normally our most vociferous stand, the Steve Fletcher stand. I couldn't hear loads. There was quite a bit of singing. I was surprised actually how much there was in the Ted McDougall stand. But to be honest, I've got no idea how much singing there were in other parts of the ground, including the Steve Fletcher stand, because you realise when you're in a different part of the ground that the acoustics don't carry that well in the stadium. You were sat a bit closer to that end of the ground. Was it quite a quiet night, or was it just that I was sat a long way away?
It was a quieter night than normal, and someone mentioned it on social media today about there was no coherence with the Stevie Fletcher stand. There was the left side was singing one song and the right side was singing another song, and it just wasn't in unison. We can, or from where we sit normally, we can hear the south end, and sometimes that then starts, the north stand off. But yeah, it was just a little bit flat, really. I think not having many games recently and not having as many games as we do in the Championship, and I think that might have affected the players slightly as well, because it was a completely different squad from Birmingham last week, and having a couple of weeks off sometimes.
A bit rusty.
Yeah, a little bit rusty, and it wasn't the nicest night to play football. But yeah, it was just a little bit flat, and it's we've always said, we are the 12th man and we can help to raise the atmosphere in the ground. And I go back to the light show at the start, I didn't enjoy that at all. But hey ho, someone liked it, I think. So,
I didn't mind that. It doesn't bother me either way, to be honest. It was their first chance to do it, because although we've had the lights on during games, we haven't had them on at the start of a game before, because we haven't had an evening game at Dean Court until last night this season, since we got those new lights. So I suspect somebody somewhere was very keen to press that button that made that happen. They've been waiting for months to do it, and I don't think that'll be a one-off. I think we'll probably see that at most home games from now on. So I guess we'll just have to get used to it. So you don't think the lack of atmosphere was down to the ban on alcohol sales last night then?
I don't think so. No, the club did give some free alcohol away up in the sports bar, as I was told.
How did I miss that?
They were handing out vouchers apparently, and because obviously they couldn't charge for the beer, there was a few vouchers to get a free beer. So, but I don't think it was down to the alcohol. I mean, there's a couple of pubs locally, and you can have a quick couple of drinks before you go down. But money-wise, it probably cost them a few bob that they lost out on sales.
Yeah, I don't know what the issue is. I rarely drink at the match anyway. I take my son, and it's not quite the father and son activity we're ready for yet. I'm looking forward to it in a few years' time. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of licensing issue. I saw someone suggested that they hadn't renewed the license or something. So let's hope that's sorted out soon. Because, like you said, in terms of income, I suppose most of the income comes from non-match day sources now, but it's still a source of revenue, and also people enjoy it. I have participated over the years once or twice, so. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be sorted out soon. The other thing about the atmosphere was, from where, I was right next to the West Ham fans, and I've had that Dimitri Payet song in my head all day today. But how well could you hear them from where you were?
They were quite vocal. Obviously, when we scored in the first half, they went a little bit quiet. But certainly in the second half, when they got back into the game, and certainly after the free kick, they were very vocal. There was a bit of banter as well going on with us, with the North Stand at one point. But yeah, they were good singers. But like I say, you could hear sometimes them more than us, especially when they went 2-1 up and then 3-1 up.
This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear Micropub in Southbourne-on-Sea. No loud music, no TVs, and no ringtones. Just good ale, good conversation, and good times. Just like a pub used to be. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Into the second half, very early on in the second half, Antonio skipped past three of our players, Dan Gosling, Matt Ritchie, and Harry Arter and shot wide, which didn't bode too well. But the thing that was most significant from that little passage of play was that was when I noticed Matt Ritchie was limping. He kind of pulled up as Antonio went past him, and then when the ball had gone off, his arm was up, and the old "I need to come off" signal was being given, and he went off, and it's been reported it was a dead leg. I did see somewhere on Vitals, I think Neil Dawson, who writes excellent reports on Vitals, said that he was pointing at his ankle as he was coming onto the pitch. So I'm not really sure what was going on, but Eddie was obviously aware there was some sort of issue. And so on came One-Eyed Turby and Big Chair. And unfortunately, much like the substitution when Carroll went off and West Ham were a little bit confused about their game plan, Ritchie's departure and Iturbi's debut had a big impact on how we were playing. It was kind of the beginning of the end in some respects, wasn't it?
It was. When he come on, he was wearing the old gloves as well, so that was a sign he was going to be a little bit cold.
It never goes down well with the fans, that, does it?
It doesn't, and he didn't do much running around at one point either, so he might have got even colder. But yeah, it was an anticipated arrival. You know, we were all waiting for him to come on. You know, he looks, well, he doesn't look, he is small, and we know he's quite fast as well. But yeah, his first couple of minutes didn't bode well, did they?
Well, you could see, I don't know if you could see, but I could see Eddie going nuts about him tracking back. Well, I'm assuming that was what it was about. Almost as soon as he stepped on the pitch, he was saying, "You can't get back," you know, because I thought he looked all right going forward. But yeah, he just isn't used to the game in this country, and that doesn't mean that he can't adapt. And I'm sure Eddie will be working extremely hard to get him up to speed in every sense with what's happening and what's required. I've got no problem with us signing players from other countries and from other leagues around the world. But that said, I am normally quite pleased when we sign a player who's at least played in England for a little while, because it just means that they've got some experience of what the game is like over here. And it isn't necessarily the most effective style of football on the world stage or even on the European stage, but that's the way it is. And the league's always been, well, quite physical and always been fast-paced, and it seems to be getting faster and faster, and there's always, work rate's a big thing. And yeah, sometimes the game in this country is criticised for that, and perhaps rightly so, because we don't perform internationally. But yeah, it must be quite a shock for a player who's come from a country where the expectation is, if you're a winger or a kind of, he's almost a forward in some respects, you don't really need to do any work getting back, to then be thrown into what he was faced with last night. And I mean, I could see him at one point gesturing towards the bench where they wanted him to go, and kind of going, should I go here? Should I go here?
That was just, I think, the free kick just before they scored.
Yeah.
But just prior to that, he did make a couple of tackles, and later on, he likes a tackle, and I do believe he has got a bit of an issue with some anger management, and likes a.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's been carded a few times, but there was a couple of tackles. It was full blown, full bodied. He wasn't pulling out of them.
I'm sure Harry Art will keep him on the straight and narrow.
Yes, but yeah, he was stood. Cookie was shouting him at one point, and it was on there when they scored on the free kick, and he didn't know where to stand or who to mark or what to do. But yeah, he was a little bit of a fish out of water at that point, I think.
I think if Richie's fit, Eddie will go. Well, I don't think Turby will be starting against Norwich. And I suppose looking back, and who am I to question Eddie Howe? But I think Eddie probably would think, I wish I'd put Pugh on, because, well, obviously Pugh knows the system. Because what the impact of his Turby's and we're having I feel like we're having a right go at him here, and I'll better say that he's only played. Well, I don't know what it was, half an hour, 40 minutes in English football. So you've got to give the guy a chance, and hopefully I'll be eating these words and apologising for having a bit of a dig at him soon, was that it pulled our midfield apart, because it wasn't just that that side of the pitch, and he swapped with Junior Stanislas after a while, was being exposed, but also our midfielders, our central midfielders, I think particularly Gosling, were having to get over and help out. And it just created a bigger space through the middle, almost as if we were playing 4 in midfield instead of the 5. And, well, Payet just started to make hay, didn't he?
He did, yeah. It was a little bit disjointed. And, it's not having a go at Turby, but it was the whole team, really, at one point. It was just, they just lost their way, obviously then leading up to the free kick, again, which was another silly foul on the edge of the box, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Adam Smith, he's put in some great performances recently, and been given a run in the team, which he must have been absolutely, ravenous to get a starting place that he could call his own, and he's largely made that position his own. I mean, there's always a chance things will change when Tommy Elphick's fit, and perhaps if we don't pick up results, but he has been, I think Duncan was on here a few weeks ago, pointing out that he didn't get back quick enough. Well, he didn't get back quick enough for this one. I think he was a bit frustrated about something that happened just before it, but he pulled Antonio's shirt. He got booked for that. The worst thing about it was that Simon Francis was there and would have at least put the challenge in, which would have slowed the play down. And, imagine, hopefully it would have been a clean challenge, and they wouldn't have got the free kick. So we were kind of, well, we didn't know what was going to happen with the free kick, but we were the authors of our own downfall there, weren't we?
We were. I don't know what to say to it, really, but yeah, it was another, a poor challenge, and obviously we know what happened straight afterwards, but those areas you can't be giving away free kicks like that, especially to someone with the ability of Poyet's got in his with his feet.
Yeah, he's the darling of the Upton Park crowd. I think it's fair to say he's been out the team, and although they've continued to avoid defeat, they've drawn a lot of games. He came on, I think, it might have been against Wolves in the Cup. They won, and this was his first start. I was hoping he wouldn't make this game, but then he'd already done well in the first half, but he became the dominant figure. And it was only for about 10 minutes, because he went off maybe 10, 12 minutes after the free kick, but he just completely ran the show. And starting with the free kick, it was a very good free kick, and I'm not sure if Boris would have got to it anyway. I haven't seen this mentioned in any of the reports, but I had a good look at it, because yet again the goals were down our end, and it glances off Sermon's head, and they might get, look, the pictures I've seen on the internet have been a bit ropey, but it might be clearer when it's on Match of the Day later this evening, and that, I think, may have taken it away from Boritz, and it took it right into the top right-hand corner, like the most difficult place to save it. But I think Pye will be taking most of the credit for that one, won't he?
He will. I think on first reflection, when I first saw it, it looked like it took a deflection. Seeing the replays, it looks like it does take a deflection. Boric makes a token effort to try and get it, but sometimes he's nimble, sometimes he's not. is one of those ones where he can make a fantastic save, and then sometimes I'll try and dive, but I haven't got nowhere near it, and there we go. It's gone in the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind it was deflected, he had no chance. It was
it was you take the goalkeeper out of it. It was a sublime free kick. Yes, it took a slight defection, but I don't think many goalkeepers would have got to it anyway.
That would have been. I mean, he made a couple of good saves, as we discussed. That would have been his best save of the season. Anyway, so that put us at 1-1, and all the momentum then, which had already favoured West Ham once Richie went off, it swung almost completely in their direction. We took Benicophobe off before they scored their second goal, a couple of minutes before that, and who should we see in a Bournemouth shirt again but Lewis Graben? He was largely cheered when he came on. So before we go on to talk about the second goal that West Ham scored, where do you stand on the Lewis Graben debate, Damien?
Where do I stand? Sorry, Pete. That's AFCB, Pete.
I know who you mean.
Yeah. I'm pleased he's back. Obviously, speaking to the club, inside the club, I know some of the reasons why he did leave and why he's back. And yeah, he knows our system. We know what he's about. He can score goals. He scored goal for us before. We can play to his strengths. And the fee, it's been banded around. It's been confirmed how much it's been, I don't believe, but it's probably nearer 5-6 million than 7-8 million, what people are saying. But yeah, I'm pleased. He is a proven goal scorer. Okay, maybe not in the Premiership, but he fits our style of play, and I think that's where we're benefit in the long run.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp as you. I always liked him. I was very impressed the season he played for us in the Championship. I was surprised as well, actually, because the previous season he did all right, the first half of the season, and then the second half, Brett Pittman, this is the year we got promoted out of League One, took on
the goals and scored 10 goals, didn't he? Yeah.
And Graben his form seemed to completely desert him. I think he only scored a couple of goals to the end of the season. He seemed to miss a few sitters, and I think it was at that point quite a lot of fans actually started to perhaps feel a little negative towards him. Even though he scored 22 goals in the Championship the following season, he never seemed to quite win over all of the crowd. Although I voted for him Player of the Season. He won a couple of the Player of the Season awards, but and then he left, and I know some people are a little bit peeved about the way he left. You never quite know what's true and what isn't. We could easily say, well, Eddie Howe left and he came back, and we sing a song about that. Are we going to start singing one about Graben? But he's back, and I guess regardless of which side of the fence you stand on regarding his return, I think now he's back and in the team, in the shirt, he deserves as much support as anyone else. And even the most ardent Graben pessimist, shall we say, will I'm sure be cheering him to the rafters if he scored a couple of important goals, because I guess even if you're not necessarily warm towards the individual, you're still kind of supporting the shirt. So yeah, I don't think he'll have too much trouble slotting back into the team, but I hope not. And also, well, I've got a sneaky feeling Eddie might start him against Norwich. I think he's got every reason to let Alex Neil have it, really, and I think he'd have that extra 5-10% of motivation and energy to do the business in that one. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I don't pick the team, but I've got a sneaky feeling. But overall, definitely glad he's back. Anyway, he didn't have a huge impact last night, and by the time he got any chances, they were in front. Their second goal, there was a little bit of farce that immediately preceded it when Charlie Daniels kind of slipped and knocked the ball out for a throw-in near the corner flag. and it was taken quickly, and we weren't, I don't think, totally ready. And unfortunately, you can't say, like in tennis or cricket, I'm not ready. The game just goes on. And the ball was thrown to Payet, who danced past Iturbi and Daniels and found Valencia, who hammered it into the net. And the first time I saw it, and possibly even the second time when I watched the clip today on the internet, I thought, well, there was nothing we could have done apart from not fallen over and conceded the free kick, the throw-in. But after watching it a few times, it was the fact that we were not organised. We were caught out because we weren't expecting to concede the throw-in. And Valencia, I don't know if you've watched it again or not, was stood in acres of space.
It was, unmarked, yeah.
And that was the reason they scored the goal, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was again, down our left back there, right flank, when Turby went for a wander and did come back and help Daniels, but like I say, Daniels went on his backside, and we were sort of like, everyone was just stood there gobsmacked, really, just what happened there. And then obviously the cross come in and he's whacked it into the back of the net. But again, it's Poyet causing us problems all afternoon, wasn't he? Really, all evening, no matter where he popped up on the pitch.
Well, I was delighted when Slaven Bilic took him off. A few minutes later, I was surprised until I then remembered that he's only just come back to full fitness. So he's obviously saving him for the games that they've got coming up. But it didn't really change the game much. I mean, Valencia scored that goal. He was having a good game. Antonio was. They were all playing well. Before they scored their third goal, we had a penalty appeal. I think you probably had a better look at this one than me. Lewis Graben had a shot from the edge of the box, struck Bonner. Did he handball it?
Oh, if first reaction, it was a penalty. After seeing the replay, I don't think he could have done much about it. It was a bit like Simon Francis one where he's slid along the ground and the Costa's hit it against his arm, if you know what I mean.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, seeing the replay, I don't think, he was too close to him. Yes, his arm's outstretched, but I think that was just the momentum of his challenge tackle, what he was doing. But yeah, first shout was definite penalty, but I don't think it was.
Well, that's always the first shout when it's one that could be given for us. I'm always up off my seat, penalty. But sometimes I get given, you see it later, you think, oh, we're a bit lucky to get that one. But well, you hope the luck will even itself out, or even go a bit in our favour over the course of the season. But I guess that's the nature of supporting a team. But anyway, we had to take Harry Arter off, or we did take him off. We brought Glenn Murray on. I guess Eddie thought, well, I'll put two up front and see if we can get a point. That didn't really work because they got a third goal. Another free kick conceded. Dan Gosling this time. Tripped Antonio right on the corner of the 18-yard box. And it didn't look like a great position to have a shot at goal. And I was certainly expecting Valencia to maybe pop it to the back post or, into the mixer, as they say, and West Ham to see if they could get something on it. But he was thinking something completely different. And he couldn't have hit that free kick any better, could he?
He couldn't, no. It was, we were sat there and we were just absolutely, gobsmacked, chins were on the floor. And it was the fact that Boric didn't even move either, and it was just like, okay, it's in the back of the net. What happened there then? Obviously, seeing the replays again, could Boric move? I don't know. Was it another sublime free kick? Well, it was good, but yeah, it was just again stood there watching, which obviously for the second and third goals, it's like, okay, yes, it's a free kick, but yeah, I think it was a good free kick again.
Yeah, I think that one, we had a little chat about the impact of the deflection for the first goal, the free kick from Payet, but that one I thought it was unsavable, and he just struck it so sweetly and into an area of the goal that was just didn't look on. It just
No.
and I was had a very good view of this, and at first, only for a split second, I thought that's the side netting, or it's not gone in. It was only when the ball then bounced, sort of came off the net and bounced on the grass inside the goal. I thought, oh my God, it's gone in. And Boris is like standing there looking flummoxed, and obviously the West Ham players are all legging over to their fans and all the rest of it. And yeah, I mean, we were just like Eddie Howe said after the game, you don't see those kind of quality free kicks much in the Championship, and those are the margins, the difference between playing and moving up the leagues. And I remember when we got into the Championship, there was a lot of talk like that. But yeah, sometimes you just got to say, well, I mean, there were some good players who were playing at or near the top of their game for West Ham last night, and that was certainly a huge factor in why we lost the game. We had a couple of late chances. I think Adrian saved one from Iturbi, but that was about it. And it was definitely a fair result, but we've had a decent run. We had haven't picked up that many points in the last few games. We lost to Arsenal and West Ham, and drew with Palace and drew with Leicester. But I don't think it was anything that would merit an overreaction. I saw someone on Twitter said it was our worst performance since we lost at Swindon under Paul Groves. Now, that may or may not be true, but I think we have to see the bigger picture in that we are going to lose games like that sometimes this season in this league, and we already have. But overall, and I hope I'm not eating these words come May, there's still plenty of room for optimism, isn't there?
Definitely. I mean, I wasn't at the Norwich game, but I've seen the highlights and seen on Cherry's player. But I think Norwich game away was probably one of the worst we've played for a while. Obviously, I was there at the Tottenham game at home. That wasn't our best performance, and it wasn't our best performance last night. But you take, and I'm sure Eddie says it, and there's little positives what you can take out of it. All the new signings got a little bit of a run out. Hopefully minutes on the pitch for them. But yeah, it's tough, and it makes Saturday's game a little bit more interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, and hopefully it will galvanise us for the game against Norwich, as opposed to having the opposite effect. I'd love to beat. I'm not Kevin Keegan. I'd love to beat them, because we didn't beat them last year. I think we drew at theirs, and they won at Dean Court. It was Alex Neil's first game. In fact, I'm not even sure he was actually in charge that day. He came down at half time and I think made a few changes. And they had a goal that I think Wes Hoolahan may have handled on the way into the net or something, and Cameron Jerome scored for them, and they only had 10 men. And then this season we had that highlighter pen game when we played them and they beat us 3-1. But yeah, I think it's almost feel like we owe them. And I mentioned Graben, and I'm sure he feels like he owes them. So yeah, hopefully, I'm just looking at the results at the moment as we speak. They're losing 1-0 to Norwich, and they've had a player sent off, Gary O'Neill. So yeah, well, fingers crossed Stoke will win that. I don't find myself rooting for Stoke very often. And yeah, they'll be coming into the game on the back of the defeat as well, which won't galvanise them, I hope.
I hate to disappoint you, but it's 1-1 now.
Oh, it's 1-1. I shouldn't have. I spoke too soon. The curse of the podcaster as opposed to the commentator. Oh well, we'll see. Anyway, that was about it last night. Except, of course, before we wind it up, Damien, didn't I see you on the pitch before the game last night?
I did, and I'll give a big shout out to C4L, the main stand sponsors. just before Christmas, there was a competition on Twitter to retweet and like a post they put up. So I retweeted it. And on the day before Christmas Eve, I had an email to say I'd won the competition for a signed Bournemouth shirt. So the C4L marketing director presented me with a signed shirt on the pitch just before kickoff, which is now hung proudly on Declan's bedroom wall. It certainly made my Christmas day, and it made my evening last night. To go out on the pitch and to see a couple of players and enjoy my 5 minutes of fame, shall we say?
So we're not going to see it on eBay at the end of the month when you get a bit skint, then?
No, definitely not. That's one shirt, I can categorically say won't be going on eBay. So it's definitely staying on the bedroom wall. I was going to have it in the front room, but the wife said no to that one.
Yeah, well, you can't have everything, I suppose. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, mate. I look forward to getting back up in the main stand with you on Saturday, and hopefully my taking refuge from the Ted McDougall stand will bring us some luck again. So thanks a lot, mate. Cheers.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Always good to hear from Damien, and fingers crossed he'll be able to resist the temptation to invade the pitch before kick-off at future fixtures. His first opportunity to do so comes on Saturday, so let's hope the Cherries can put things right and avenge our pink-shirted defeat at Carrow Road earlier in the season. So up the Cherries in all departments, and goodbye.
The White Bear Micro Pub on Southbourne Grove is a proud supporter of AFC Bournemouth and sponsor of all departments. Head to the Bear for real ales, locally produced food, and plenty of good conversations about the Cherries. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.